If you followed Jesus the last week of his earthly life, you would have clearly noticed the deliberate choice he makes to spend a whole lot of time in the temple, or what he calls his Father's house. He defined for us the uniqueness of it when he referred to it as the house of prayer for all nations. And therefore it grieved him deeply when, upon entering the temple, he sees merchants of cattle, sheep, doves turning the area around the church into what he then describes as a den of robbers. It is clear that Jesus saw the temple as a place of respite and retreat, a place of spiritual processing. He thinks about the church as a warm place of worship. He never envisioned it being best described as a den of robbers. These poor Jewish people were charged half a shekel per person annually as a temple tax. And those who guarded the activity of the temple demanded that the Jews pay their taxes in the approved Jewish currency. And since crowds gathered from nations other than Israel on festival days, it meant not everybody had the right currency and were then forced to turn to money changers. These money changers would exchange their money for the correct currency, and of course, then, Ararat, you can imagine, can't you, that those who provided this service cushioned in for themselves a percentage of profit that went into their pockets. To accommodate the worshipers who had come from a distance away from Jerusalem, these merchants made available the animals for sacrifice, approved cattle, approved sheep, approved doves, that were then sold in the temple courts and positioned right close to the altar of burnt offerings. It's what I would call an easy buy and burn accommodation, right? While teaching in the temple courts one day, Jesus, however, denounces the Pharisees for taking advantage of poor peasant farmers like this. For Jesus, it was activity that showed absolutely no concern for the poor. And the descriptive image he puts on his rebuke was this: you who devour widows' houses. These are some strong words for what Jesus sees, and it's clear for him that the poor are always to be central in all things spiritual. The poor are to be regarded in temple practice, including the very sacrifices God is demanding of those who would worship him. Well, immediately after this exchange, Jesus takes a seat at a place opposite where the worshipers are entering and exiting, placing their offerings. It was called the Court of Women. And there, the temple authorities had positioned 13 chests that were formed like trumpets, wide base and narrowing, shoot as it is extending up, and donated offerings are placed right inside of them. Well, that day, Jesus positions himself opposite where people are giving their offerings, and he's watching people cast their coins into the containers, both rich and poor alike, giving their gifts to God. And then she walks in. She was a widow who, when she lost her husband, she lost her income, and essentially she lost everything. No sons being mentioned in the text meant probably she had none to support her. She's, by the time of the text, believed to be too old to remarry. She, like others in her lived predicament, has been defrauded by the government, can't afford to hire or pay for a defender to plead her case and to protect whatever remaining property or possessions she has. And yet, living in dire poverty could not diminish the depth of her faith. No matter what has happened to her, the severe loss, the mistreatment, the brutal parts that come with aging, she didn't let any of these realities diminish her hope in God. For her, she is there that day giving her offering to make a statement: God is the only protector I have left in life. That day, while Jesus is observing, she walks into the court of women. She goes straight towards these 13 trumpet-like shaped offering receptacles, and all she had on her was 2 small copper coins. In fact, the smallest coins in exchange circulation at the time. They really amounted to nothing in the eyes of the rich, and to most others for that matter, but all she had was 2 coins, and that's what she gave, placing them in the offering as a demonstration of the weight she was putting on her hope in God. Jesus heard it too. The distinction of sound when her 2 tiny, seemingly worthless copper coins hit the sides or bottom of that container, and he knew that for that widow, that was all she had. Jesus was well aware that in this culture, she had every right. It would be expected to only have to give one of those coins and to keep the other for herself, since it represented her last when her husband was alive. He would no doubt at times need money to pay an expense, and he would get it from his wife. She would hand over what she had. She knew that before the day would come to completion, he would reimburse her so that she could go out and purchase necessary food for the house. And this widow, having lost husband, no sons, closed door that aging has created, she understood that for her, God was her only provider now, and she could not risk giving God only half when calculating the possible reimbursement paid out in blessing and protection and defense and sustenance. She gave it all and expected that before that day would meet its end, God would provide her needs. What a faith, what a hope, what belief in God. This is what Jesus saw in that brief moment as he hears the sound of 2 copper coins hitting the side or bottom of the offering container. Jesus didn't let the moment pass either. Hey, disciples, come here for a minute. Let me point to this poor widow. You see her over there? She has dropped more into the treasury today than everybody else. And Jesus explains that a lot of rich folk have given in these temple offerings today, but they've given out of their wealth. This poor widow has come in here and given all she has because she is giving out of her need. She's laying her life down in front of a sovereign God and making the clear statement, God, you sustain me. God, you keep me. God, you provide for me. You be my defense. You be my sustainer. And Jesus blesses her. We don't get the details, but he blesses her so much that Mark feels it his obligation to mention her as he is recounting his discipleship journey with Jesus. What a high value Jesus puts on small offerings. Now, I know some of y'all think it's a sermon on money, and that's why you ain't said nothing yet. But this is not a sermon about money. I bring attention to this because I keep interacting with people, having exchange with people. I keep observing people who are negatively impacted by the inability to make huge offerings in life. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about time and attitude and emotionality and effort and behavior and mindset to the Lord, to life's demands, and to the expectations that others have placed on them. Many people are demotivated by the fragility of their own effort. Slow pace of progress, the battle that goes on in the mind and in the flesh and in the spirit. So many people are just down because we so often stand before the Lord knowing we have so little to give. Lord, I wish I had more energy. I wish I had more excitement. I wish I had more optimism. I wish I had more capacity. I wish I had more ability. I intended to give you more effort. I just knew I could last longer. I just knew I could hold out far more for extended periods of time. I thought I had the stamina. I thought, God, when I was verbally attacked, that I was at a place where I could now tame my tongue and resist the need to strike back. And yet we stand before God only having these small offerings, such small incremental progressive steps. And I'm here to tell you, if that's all you have, Jesus says bring it to him, because he puts high value on small offerings. Who am I talking to in here? In this text, Jesus is teaching that he's blessing not only the size of our efforts and offerings, but the willingness to give what little we have when what we have is weighted in hope. that our small attempts to walk right in him and to treat others right and to do what is healthy for our lives and to put up the best fight to better our lives, to spiritually offer our lives and to chase a life of faithfulness to the Lord. Jesus blesses effort and surrender of any size and not just the enormity of the offering made. Now, this has nothing to do with money. It's not the value of the money. It's the weight and value of the hope she exercises when she gives this really small offering. You know why Jesus blesses her? Because the money was small, but the hope was heavy. And I know that there are those here this weekend who've been living so hesitant in life, so hard on yourself, almost to the place of disqualifying yourself from all things future because you equate merit with size and blessings with size. And Jesus comes along in this text and he shatters all of that thinking when he teaches through this widow that he puts high value on small offerings when you give them weighted in hope. The small attempt to pray when I can't eke out a prayer that lasts for an hour. God can bless me when all I have is 30 seconds of prayer before I make my way out of the house. It's not that I shouldn't give him some extended times to pray, but there are times when I just can't muster it up. There are times when I've got too much competition for my mental attention, and all I have is the capacity to pray to the Lord as I exit the house in the morning. Lord, keep me safe and be a hedge of protection. And he says, I'm glad you at least gave me the small offering, and I'm going to give you a day of a big blessing. The small attempt. Come on, I feel like preaching one more time. The small attempt to adjust my attitude and to change my behavior, to make even small steps, to try faith emboldened tasks, small attempts to step out on belief against the facts and in spite of the fear, small attempts to listen differently and to accept growth amidst my mistakes and my failures, to admit the growth even if it's incremental when monumental was what I was desiring. He puts high value on small offerings just to see something different, even if I'm not yet totally convinced or converted, to make today my first step, even if my first step should have been yesterday, to accept the reality of where things are right now and to wake up today and confess I made bad decisions on yesterday, but God didn't let me die last night, and if I got up this morning, at least let me try to make a right decision. Do you all discern what I'm trying to teach? Your relationship with the Lord is not just the sum total of high offerings you surrender to him that reveal big changes and cataclysmic adjustments, but your relationship to Jesus is also about the small offerings you extend to him that reveal the weight of your hope and the worth of your faith and the depth of your belief and the substance of your spiritual convictions. Lord, I only have this much confidence left. I've been battling doubt so long, but I only have this much confidence left. But with the little confidence I have, I'm going to thrust it in your direction. And I'm going to put my hope in you. Lord, I only have this much effort. I'm just out of optimism. I'm low on energy. My confidence is waning. My desire and drive are low. But no matter how small it is, I'm going to offer it to you because my hope is in the total investment I make in my own future. Who am I talking to in here?